What's up? I'm Harbor with Extra Credit Design Club, and this is part 3 of the Intro to Typeface Design series. Alright, you already know we are using the Glyphs mini app to design a geometric sans serif typeface. This is part 3. In part 1, we got to know the Glyphs mini software, we defined our character set, we set our guides and parameters, and we designed our first set of glyphs, the straight characters. In the second part, we designed all of our round characters. We learned a couple more tools, and we got a pretty good handle on the Glyphs mini software. This being part 3, we are going to cover all of the angled glyphs. Now, we've pretty much covered most of the different tools with inside the Glyphs mini software, so this video will be more about the specific concepts of designing the individual letters, rather than mastering the tools. There'll be a few things here or there, a few new tools, but this is going to be more of a faster run through of using Glyphs Mini to create these angled glyphs. That being said, let's hop into the software and get going right away. As I said, we are going to cover the angled glyphs. We are going to start with the capital A here, then we're going to do the V, the W, the Y, the X, the K, and the Z. Then we are going to do the lowercase. Also, we have the K, and we have the V, W, X, Y, and Z as well. So the first one I'm going to start with is the capital A. I'll just double click into this and we will get it going. As always, when I'm designing a new set of characters, I want to reference the capital H. So I'm just going to type that in here. And then going into the A, I am going to control click, add component, and I'm going to add the capital H to the A and then decompose it right away. Now, I am going to highlight these top points and move them over just 1 to 300 and then back 10 and 1 to 300 and back 10. Now that will make them line up just exactly perfectly here up top. Now looking at this, the first thing that you're going to notice is obviously this H is looking a little bit uptight. Thinks he's better than all the other letters with this top crossbar. So what we want to do is move that crossbar down so that we have about the same visual weight under the crossbar and within the counter here. That to me is looking good enough just to start off. I'll move in these extra handles here in so we can get a good preview. Now holding down the spacebar to preview, I can see that's a pretty good A, but we do have a problem. You'll notice that it looks quite a bit more narrow than the H, even though I didn't move these bottom parts of the stem. So in order to compensate for that, I am just going to select these here, move them out maybe 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 pixels. See how that looks. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 pixels. Holding down the preview, I think I could go slightly wider, maybe just 10 more pixels on each side. And moving my crossbar into these stems here, get a good preview. Okay, that to me is looking pretty good. I'm going to drop down this crossbar just a hair, and there we have it. Not yet though. To the keen observer, you will notice that this crossbar looks thicker than these strokes right here that make up the angle. That is because we sheared them, kind of slanted them over, and made them more narrow. So if we go to our measurement tool, we can see that, okay, we're looking at 73 pixels across. That's almost as small as 72 pixels, which is our completely horizontal stroke. However, these strokes are more vertical, so we want to make them a little bit wider. Now you might think just naturally, oh, I can click this outside bar, move it out wider. However, I'm not going to do that because it will make this top portion more wide than I want it to be. I like how it's kind of narrow here. It's 80 pixels across, same as this H bar. Conceptually, it works for me. What I'm going to do is instead just drag these bottom points in a hair. Maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pixels. And here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now what this did is it widened the base of the stem, but didn't change the top here. Now why is that? That's because whenever we have these joining stems, you'll remember from our capital B, we had to visually compensate, make these much more narrow so that we didn't get a dark spot right here where the stems join. And we want to do the same thing with the A to a certain extent. So I'm going to hit L here, get my measurement tool. Right here we're working with 74 pixels across, more or less. And down here we're working with 77.5. I think that that's something that is going to be more reasonable. It looks more consistent, and again, it makes sure that this part isn't too dark and clogged up. I am happy with the A, except for one stylistic choice that I might want to make. This being a geometric sans serif, it's based off geometric shapes. This A is obviously based off the triangle. It has a point here, but a flat top. So perhaps for this A, I want to point the top of this shape. How can I go about doing that easily? It's super simple. I can get this crossbar. For now, I'm just going to move it over out of the way. Then I'm going to select these two objects. I'm going to go up to Glyphs, and I am going to go to Remove Overlap. What that does is it just joins these two objects into one object. Now I have less points to work with up here up top. It's less messy. And one last thing I'm going to do is I am going to click this little line here. I am going to control click, and I'm going to add a guide. And now because this straight line is highlighted, it will give me a guide exactly where this straight line is. I'm going to do the same for this side. I am going to say add guide, and now I can take this point and make it exactly where it needs to be. Move my crossbar back into place, and we will see how this is looking. Okay, I got a problem with it. It just is a little too tall here. We do like overshoot, but calm down, capital A. So what I'm going to do is just bring this down till the overshoot is not too crazy. Let's see. If I bring it down so that this point is highlighted with this circle, I know that it matches the overshoot of my circular glyphs. However, one pro tip is you want your angled glyphs overshoot, if they are pointy like this, to be slightly taller even than your circular glyphs. So I'm going to select these and go up maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pixels and zoom out, see how that looks in context. Okay, maybe even 4 pixels was enough. 1 pixel, I could show off like I can tell the difference, but let's be honest. No. So 5 pixels is good. And then I want to do the same thing, get my measurement tool and make sure, oh, you can see now that this is now 78 pixels wide, too wide, whereas this is 76. So I want to compensate for that, clicking that point, bringing it up a hair, and then I'm just going to switch between my measurement tool. Okay, 43 pixels. I believe we were at 44 before. So switching back and forth. Okay, 44 pixels, that works for me here. 76 pixels, I might want to bring that out just a hair. Measure it again. 78 pixels works for me. I like how this A is looking. Possibly I could drop this crossbar down just a hair. Okay, and I am going to call that a capital A. Moving on from the capital A, I'm just going to select everything. I am going to copy it with my capital V, paste it. I'm going to go over to my tools here, the transformation tools, and I am going to simply flip vertically, delete this crossbar in the middle, give myself some good side bearings, 10 on each side, nothing crazy. Let's go 10 on each side here. And then you know what, for this I can just do A and A, get my side bearings small as the A are because they're the same looking shape. Zooming out, okay, that's an acceptable V. The one thing I would say to pay attention to is make sure that these points up top are hitting your cap height instead of this point here at the bottom hitting your cap height. That would be a bit weird looking. Moving on from here, we are going to draw the W. Now there are a couple different options when drawing the W. I'm just going to copy and paste in this V here and show you what they might be. You might copy and paste this V twice and simply scoot it over, and then you have right here kind of a XY fancy looking W. I'm going to make sure my side bearings are good, 10 and 10, or better yet, A and A. And now, okay, that's one way to do the W. Another way I might be able to do the W is delete that, select the V, copy it, paste it into the W, and then move these walls in about 100 pixels each. Now I'm going to need to switch between my measurement tool and make sure my stem width is consistent. So bump that up here. Switching between my measurement, 73, maybe bring it up just slightly to 74 if I can help it. 74.5, good enough. Let's measure up here. 80, too much. I want to rein that in 2 pixels. 2. 1, 2. Get back to my measurement. How am I looking? Okay. 79 looks good. 73 looks good. I have my V. I'll copy and paste that in twice. And now I can, moving that over, make it so my points connect here. Now with this, you also might want to use the same treatment with the A, making guides here for the sides, lining it up, pointing it out, dropping it down, the same basic workflow that we went for to point the A and the W. You could do that. For this typeface, just for the sake of not having an exactly run-of-the-mill geometric sans, and for the sake of, let's be honest, simplicity, I am going to make this crossed W right here. Now the thing you want to pay attention to with this is you don't want it to be too narrow. You don't want to have this negative space all filled in and clogged, making your letter look darker than the other letters. So I'm going to be generous with my space here and here and here, lightening up the letter, making sure there's as much negative space as can be without it looking weird. And I am going to call that, zooming out, a pretty good W. From here, we can do our Y, capital Y. Same thing, I'm going to copy and paste the V. I'm going to get these bottom points, move them up, and then I need to do some side bearing checks here. Go A and A, and then I, like always, am going to manipulate these points, switching between my ruler, making sure that I have a consistent stroke width. Okay, so I can see I need to widen these quite a bit. I'll try 8 pixels on either side. Switch back to my measurement. Okay, 77, which works. These are slightly more horizontal than, say, the stroke of the V, so slightly skinnier works. And now I am going to hit F or Shift F to toggle between my primitive tools and just create a stroke here that is 80 pixels wide. 1, 2. Now I'm going to select this bottom point and one of my side points. I can see that they're 50 pixels apart. I want them to be 40 because this is the center of this 80 pixel width stroke. So I'm gonna select this, move it over 10 pixels, and zoom out a bit. There we have our Y looking good in context with the other letters. Next thing we want to design is our X. For our X, I am simply going to take the H, as always, paste it into the X. I'm going to delete this middle crossbar, and I am going to go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, sure, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 700. Let's see how wide that is. 900 pixels, too wide. Back it up. Back it up. Okay, let's see how wide we are now. We're looking at 700. I think I can. Okay. That to me is looking a little bit wide. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Now I have a basic foundation for my X. I obviously need to make these strokes a little bit thicker, so I'm going to do that now by selecting that and going over, I'll send them over 20 pixels. See how that looks. Get out my ruler tool by hitting L. Okay, 78 pixels. Okay, 79. I can make them slightly thinner than that. I'll back up 1, 2, 3, 4 pixels. Here I'll back up 1, 2, 3, 4 pixels. Preview it. Okay. Now one thing to pay attention to with your X is that you want the top of your X to be slightly more narrow than the bottom of your X. Right now the bottom of my X is 710 pixels and the top is 750. That's a problem. I could try and adjust them, or I could just select everything, go up to my transformation panel here, and hit this flip vertical. Boop. Okay, so now the top part of my X is slightly more narrow than the bottom portion. Let me make sure that my measurements are good here. 75. I think I went a little too extreme. 2 pixels back. We'll see here, here, 1, 2. Okay, get my measurement tool back, and we're just finessing it. 77. That's good enough. That's looking good. Okay, so we pretty much have our X, but you might notice one optical illusion here. And that is that this crossbar, where it intersects right here, it would appear as if this top portion of this stroke is slightly kicked to the left. And it might look like if you follow this line, it kind of juts up and then continues on. So another just optical illusion that we have to deal with. Let's see. Correcting my side bearings here, I am going to get my knife tool. Remember, hold Shift E to switch between your knife and eraser. I am just going to cut that stem right there. And then I am going to just grab this bottom half, and I'll say, just nudge it until, to me, visually, it looks like this line is a continuous line. Now, I know that that makes it so that this right here, the distance is 26 pixels, whereas this distance is 20 pixels. However, looking at the X as is, it does not appear to be really, wonky in any way. So I am just going to leave it as is. Once you have the X, the K is pretty similar. So with this K, I am going to add a component. I'm going to add my capital I, select, and I am going to decompose it. So with that decomposed, I am going to select this particular arm of the X and paste that into my K. I'm going to move it over just so that it meets right here. Now I'm going to copy and paste that arm, and I am going to flip it, and I have a K. But you'll notice that this K is heinous looking. I have a few options with the K. One thing I can do is I can make the bottom arm extend from the top like this. I can select these and move them super far out, trying to make my K look as wide as my H. But for this particular typeface, all of these options are valid. I want to make a more narrow K. I have a more narrow J, capital J. And so for me, I want a couple letters that are a little bit more narrow, just to give a little something to this typeface. That being said, I do need to do some refining on this K. This join here is very heinous looking, very ugly. So what I want to do is, using this same trick that I used earlier, I want to add a guide following each of these paths. And then I want to just extend them even further out. You can see that your point will be highlighted with a little blue square when it is hitting a path. Okay. Boom. Extend it out. Now I'm going to select them and just move them out until this section of the K right here is looking acceptable to my eye. I'm going to zoom in. One thing I don't want to have happen is this, where there's a little bit of a nick here, a little bit of a nick there. So I am just going to make sure that doesn't happen. Okay, awesome. Now I am going to bring this in just so it's not overlapping. I'm going to select everything, and I am doing Command-Shift-O to remove overlap. And that to me is a good looking K. Let's make sure that this, okay, we're looking at 33, 336, 337. So this join is pretty much exactly centered. I can move it up just a hair to make it look visually centered. And I'll get my measurement tool cooking here just to make sure everything is looking kosher. 77, okay, I can move this in just a little bit. Go back to my measurement tool. 75 pixels, 75. Down here we're working with 78. Okay, that to me looks like a good K. However, this negative space is slightly too small compared to this. I know that they're the same, but visually. So I am going to just move this arm of the K on top in slightly, like that. Okay, now that to me is an alright looking K. Again, as we type things out, we might decide to change it. If we don't like the narrowness, we can always change it to either that wider K or make it so that the top arm extends and the bottom arm from that. We'll see when we get to the refining phase of this typeface. Sorry, interrupting you here. I realized your boy forgot to talk about the M and N. So right here, before we move on, I'm just going to hit you real quick with the M and the N. I'm talking capitals. Alright, so the first one we are going to do is the M, and the M is rather related to the capital V. As a good place to start with, you can just copy this V right here, paste it into the M, get your H, because everything goes back to the H. Copy these sides here, and then paste them and move them over. Oh, if I can do that. Just until we get something that we like. Right there, that to me looks good. We'll see the distance I have between these 2 points to match it up on the other side. So 30, right here 50. So I want to move those over 8 points. Making sure my side bearings are good. We have our M. It can be as easy as that, or you could, if you prefer, go for a few different styles. So let me just nix this bad boy. You might, just like the W, go for something like this. Flipping these, bringing them in 100 pixels, bringing this down, Okay, bringing these over. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 maybe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you could hit yourself with a little something like this. That is another way to do an M. Again, you could point this here, what have you, have the more mountainous as opposed to the straight sides. I personally, however, think that these M's are heinous. I like the straight side. Again, you can have whatever decision you want to make, however you want to make your M. I support you entirely. But for me, I'm just gonna undo all of this noise I just did and get back to my comfortable, nice, vertical stems, M right there, boom. So that to me is looking good, super easy M. For the N, I am going to, you guessed it, plan A, copy and paste the H. And then I am just going to, drag these to match. Gotta zoom in real close here. Get that exactly. Very nice. And then down here, get an exact match. Okay. I am going to make sure my side bearings are good, H and H. And then I am just going to get that going on there. And just moving these points until there's something that I like. And I think for the N, because I did the pointed corners on the A's, the V, I did the pointed bottom of the M, I think I'm going to point the corners of this N as well. Getting into that, I am just gonna match it up here, go up to the top of my guides, go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pixels, and then move this according. Okay, and then I'll do the same for the bottom. Move this here, get it to the bottom of my guide, go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pixels, move this accordingly, and this. Okay, now we'll go boom, 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 boom. Move those down 60 pixels. I can tell it's a little too wide. I'll back them up 10. Okay, now, as always, switching between my ruler tool, 77. That might be a bit thick. I'll go 1, 2, 3 pixels. 1, 2, 3 pixels there. I'm looking at 75. That's pretty well in the middle. And that, to me, is looking like a good, acceptable enough N. It about matches the width of my H here. And for what it is, I like that N. Always considering that in the future, I will be able to go back, compensate, make sure things look good in context. All right, sorry about that interruption. Back to the regularly scheduled program. Now, the last capital letter is the Z. The Z is a super simple one. I always like to just do a super simple one at the end. It's just kind of, I don't know, something to it. So I'm going to make 2 bars here, maybe 800 pixels wide, making sure they are 72 pixels tall. Okay, I'm going to copy and paste that. I'm going to flip it onto the bottom, and I can already tell that this Z is going to be way, way too wide at 800 pixels. Bring it into 700, that might be acceptable. And get one more primitive going on here. And I am going to zoom in, making sure that these pixels just line up exactly. And down here as well. Want them to just hit that path, they do. I'm going to move this path slightly over. I want it to just meet up with that, and it does. And now I can select this top portion here. Oh, didn't want to select all of those. And moving this top portion over. Come on. There you go. holding shift. I'm gonna line it up here to the top of the Z. Okay, not quite. Zooming in here so I can get a good handle on things. Okay, everything is looking nice and lined up. However, if I get my measurement tool out, I can see I'm way too skinny there. And I need to compensate for that. Okay, I think I'm a bit wide. Let's look at it. 74. It's acceptable. Oh, actually, I think I'm a bit narrow. 1, 2. Okay. 1, 2. Oh, I can see I got a problem down here. Boom. Move that in. Alright, now with the Z, the one thing that I want to do is fix the proportions. So this Z right now looks like it's a little bit heavy right here, like it might fall down over to the left. So I'm going to take this top part and just move that over a pixel. 10 pixels. That's looking pretty good. Now, for the sake of style and consistency, I might want to consider, instead of having these cut ends of the Z, a Z that looks more like this trick of adding the guide. This right here. Oh, I selected a little too many pixels. Just want the one. Okay. So I might want to have a Z that looks something like this. And I think for the sake of consistency, because my W, my V, and my A are pointed, I will also make my Z pointed. So again, adding the guide, selecting just this single point right here, right there, correcting these guides, A. Now we have our Z. Let's get our H back so we can have a little bit of context for width. Oh, my Z's way too wide. I would have never known had I not checked. So let's grab this whole thing, move it in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, that looks good to me. Now, do I want to fix this problem here where this overshoots? Well, I could. Let's bring this back out. 1, 2. Okay, that to me looks good, looks fine. I think I'm happy with everything else, and I am going to call that a Z. Now, for the lowercase, I'm just going to type them all out. VWYXKZ, and we're pretty much going to just copy these letters, drag them down, or use the same processes throughout. I'll just go through them real quick. You can follow along if you would like. I am going to add the capital V as a component. I'm going to right away decompose it, select these top portions, move them down to the X height, and then I am going to type a lowercase o, maybe a B, to give myself some context. I can see here that my V already, even though it's ugly looking, is looking a bit wide. So I want to maybe just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 50 pixels, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Why do I always count by 5 when I want to count by 10? 50 pixels in that way. Okay, now that to me, maybe just 10 pixels out again. Okay, maybe, meh. Okay, that to me looks like a good V. Maybe 10 pixels back in. Can never tell. And I'm just going to use the same processes that I have used before. Oops. I'll double click into my V, then switch between my ruler tool here and measuring. Okay, so I can tell I got to go 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Measure that. Okay, 78 pixels. That looks good. Then this was too wide. I'll drop that down 10 and see how that looks. Woo, still wide. Drop down another 10, see how that looks. 74, okay. Zooming out, and that to me, it's looking a bit wide now that I got everything in place. I'm bring that in 10 more pixels. Okay, that is looking like a more acceptable V. Because I brought it in, I'm going to measure again. Okay, 73, that's acceptable. 78, that's acceptable still. Okay, in the context of the O, the B, the V, everything is looking good. I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste that into my, not my space, into my W. And I am going to follow just the same pattern that I did for my capital W with my lowercase. Super simple situation there. I'm going to go A, and here for the side bearing, again A. Make sure that I have that for my lowercase v. So we have our v and our w, super easy. Our lowercase y, we have all the tools that we need here to be able to create a good lowercase y. I'm going to click this. I'm going to add a guide. Same with this side. I'm going to add a guide. Now I'm going to hit P for my pen tool, and I'm going to add a point right on that intersection and another point here. Go back to my selection tool, and I am just going to click and drag these out. Now, because it's more narrow here at the bottom than the top of the stem, but I don't want it to be too narrow down here, I am just going to select this point and bring it out maybe 2 pixels. Okay, and that to me is looking good. And I'll zoom in here, make sure this is all exactly lined up. Awesome. And I'm calling that, easy as can be, a Y. For the X, I'm going to use the same process. I'm going to add in my capital X. I'm going to decompose it. I'm going to drop this down, 1, 2. Ooh, I got some ugliness going there. Don't want to have to worry about correcting that manually. Just going to simply copy and paste this one and then flip it. Okay, I need to bring that in probably 100 pixels. Okay, that to me is looking pretty close to an exact square. Good enough for me. I'm going to check the width of all of these strokes. I think they could be slightly wider. Making sure that this, okay, is more narrow. I'm going to select these. We'll try 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pixels. With these 2 points selected, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Go back to my measurement tools. Okay, that to me is looking good. Right here, the optical illusion I need to address, as before, hitting Shift E to get my knife tool and moving this back, in this case, 3 pixels, nothing crazy. Get my side bearings right, A and A, so they're 10 and 10, and that to me is an awesome X. For the K, I can simply copy this K, paste it into my lowercase, zoom in here, and then select this and these and drop them down, 1, 2. Oh, that's like a dancing. Hey, low K. Okay, low K. Move that back up 1. And then with my ruler, okay, 75, I want to make those, that's probably fine. However, right here, 69, way too thin. I'm going to move these, 10 pixels, that might be good. Check that out. 75, 75, maybe even slightly more. 1, 2. Okay, looking at it with the critical eye. That to me looks good. I'll make sure I'm not just crazy. 76, 76, okay. You know what? I'm even just gonna go Yep, 1 pixel. I'm gonna be that guy. 1 pixel difference. 1 point, and that makes a difference. For me, that looks like a good K. Finally, you already know, with the Z, we are just going to add in our Z, control click it, decompose, drop it down, and then adjust accordingly. Gotta change these points here. We gotta widen this out. I'll try 30 points. Measure it. 75-ish. That's probably good. Let's zoom out. Okay, however, it's way too wide. That's an issue. I'm just measuring it against maybe the O, the X, and that to me is looking good. Again, because we adjusted it, this is going to need to be readjusted. Oops, I got my wrong tool here. I'll move it back 10 pixels, 10, switch back here. It's still a little wide, 82. Bring that in, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Try here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, we're looking at 77, so that's within an acceptable range. Zooming out, yeah, I'll call it good for now. I'll call it good. All right, so there you have it. This is our basic set of our angled glyphs all together. Now, at this point, what I'm gonna wanna do is go back to my font window. I'm just going to select all of the glyphs I've drawn up until this point and hit them with a Command-Shift-R to just correct their paths. I like to do that every so often. Just select everything, Command-Shift-R, make sure all my paths are corrected in the right orientation and have a good origin point. So there you have it. That was part 3 of the Intro to Typeface Design series, talking about Glyphs Mini and a geometric sans serif. Now, in part 4, we are going to tackle the shouldered glyphs. I'm talking about lowercase n and the like. After that, we are going to go over the oddball glyphs. Then we're going to hit numbers, we're going to hit punctuation, we're going to hit spacing and testing and refining your typeface, and that should be that. As always, I'm Harbor from Extra Credit Design Club, and we'll catch you in part 4 of this series.